Well, welcome to our Council Preview Program. I'm Tom Loucks, Communications Director, City of Marshfield. And I'm without Steve Barg and Lois T-Strake, our mayor. They have other things to do, especially the budget this time of year. They're working on that. So I'm going to do this solo today for our Common Council meeting of October 11th, which begins at 6 p.m. right in the Common Council chambers. Please join us online. Join us on channel 991 if you have cable. You can go also on our city website at ci.marshfield.wi.us. Scroll down to the bottom on the homepage, and right there you click on it, and you can watch that meeting streaming there as well. We also have it on YouTube if you like to watch YouTube. Go to Marshfield Broadcasting's government meeting channel, and you can also watch that meeting streaming there beginning at 6 p.m. Well, we have a short agenda to talk about that's going to happen. So let's talk about the things that are going to take place on the agenda. I'm doing this on Thursday, so some things may change before the actual agenda is out on Friday. And once again, you can subscribe to our city website and get a notification of every agenda that is put out. Just go on to the website, click notifications right at the top, and you can sign those up either if you want a text or if you want an email. And you can also just pick the kind of agenda you might want. What I mean by kind is if it's finance, budget, personnel, or common council. Okay, let's talk about introduction of a new employee. That's going to come under staff updates. And we have a new associate. That person's going to be in the clerk and finance department. So if you're a patron that comes in, you will see McKenna Hill. And she is new. And I just want to kind of grab a memo here. It tells us a little bit about McKenna. And you'll get a chance to see her be introduced by our accounting manager, Jordan Munger. All right. Anyway, she came from rail transport as a driver recruiter. She's also worked for Blackhawk Community Credit Union as a lead teller. So welcome, McKenna, to the city of Marshfield. Okay, let's go down the list here. I don't have an agenda yet. They're working on it over at City Hall. We're in Old City Hall. Let's talk about approval of a purchase of a Stump Grinder. And this was brought up by Chris Holly, our street superintendent, in the Board of Public Works meeting that took place on Monday of this week. And it's going to replace an older one, as I understand. The older one is 16 years old. Let's hear from Chris at the Board of Public Works talking about the purchase of a Stump Grinder.
This is kind of a unique situation that we had started here back, if you remember, in early May. Ben came up here and requested to purchase a mini excavator. And at the time, we thought, well, we'll delay the Stump Grinder because Stump Grinder was actually in the CIP for this year. The mini excavator was for 2023. And by purchasing or getting the approval to purchase it in May, we thought we'd have it by now. Well, we just found out they're not even going to build it until October. Build date is on October. We wouldn't receive it until 2023. And during this whole process of this spring and last winter and this fall, we had a chance to demo several pieces of stump grinding equipment. One of them you could mount right on our skid steer. It was like a big corkscrew type thing, and it had two blades on it and went around. It just didn't have enough power to do what we needed it to do. Another unit we had was very similar to the one we had. We could attach it to one of our equipments, but it didn't have enough RPM to do the job that we did. Talking with the vendor who gave us demos on a few things, he said he had this one that he has. It's his demo unit. He came over about 2 weeks ago and demoed this unit, and it does exactly what we need it to do. It's a very unique piece of equipment. Now that we have the Brain Park forestation project going on, a lot of, since Mark's been here, he's been doing a lot of work in the parks areas where it's hard to get a piece of equipment back there with an attachment. So we demoed this unit. He came back and gave us a really good demo price on it. It's a 2021 with less than 500 hours on it. And so what we're looking to do now is, again, purchase this unit in the 2022 CIP project. And then we'll delay we won't receive the mini excavator that Park and Recs had scheduled for 2023. So we actually budgeted $50,000 for this piece of equipment. It came in at $40,000, and we're pretty happy with what it can do. And it'll actually free up one of our skid steers, because the old one was mounted on our skid steer, and we used it a lot in the wintertime. So we had to kind of wait to use the stump grinding once the skid steer was freed up. So with that, staff recommends the board approve the purchase of the 2021 Rayco Stump Grinder from LF George Incorporated for $40,000.
Also in our consent agenda, Jody Geary looking for the approval of filling a vacant position in the police department after a resignation of an officer. Let's hear from Jody in the Finance, Budget, and Personnel meeting addressing that.
Hello, thank you all very much for letting me appear virtually. I approached the body because on August 30th, Officer Flynn resigned from our police department, leaving a vacancy in patrol. We operate with 40 sworn officers. With the vacancy, we're down to 39. I approached Police and Fire Commission on September 15th. They approved that I fill the vacancy and approach this body for approval. With that, I asked for your approval to fill a vacancy to bring us back up to full staff.
A couple more things in consent agenda that I also want to bring up that happened in the Finance, Budget, and Personnel meeting Tuesday of this week. Our Finance Director, Jennifer Solinsky, is talking about an award and execute an agreement for external audit services.
As you are aware, we went through an RFP process to contract for a audit services for the next 5 years. Responses were sent out. The evaluation team evaluated the single response that was received timely, which was by CLA. So we're asking as the selection committee to bring forward to accept their proposal and request that we be authorized to execute an agreement with CLA. I would point out that it's not the agreement that we put in the packet. That was a mocked up version of the agreement from 2013. Since then, auditing standards and their professional guidance has issued new contracting language in terms of a master service agreement, which they would like to present to us, which would encompass a lot of the same things that you would find in this following agreement. Details out what you may have recognized as an engagement letter or the agreement for services in the past. So it's a new process, new forms. So we'll be working through those forms should we be approved to move forward with accepting their RFP and executing an agreement, which will now need to be negotiated with between our attorney and CLA based on the new forms that includes their new requirement.
And that is, that changes a little bit of things, what Jennifer just said. But also, what you had in the packet, there was another piece that the city attorney added in the last 48 hours. And you've seen this before with respect to Central Wisconsin State Fair and others. It's a piece that talks about open records requests and that the provider will be responsible for maintaining the records and providing them as necessary to fulfill said requests. That's become standard in some of our agreements in the last 2 or 3 years with contractors and consultants.
Okay. Mr. Wagner. We have a motion by Mr. Wagner to go ahead and move this on to council for approval. Second by Mr. Hendler. Any discussion? I do have one quick question.
Yes.
Are we doing this in conjunction with the utility?
Yes.
Is it forced in conjunction with utility? Can we do different options or when we did the banking Services, they approved their contract, we approved our contract, but we kind of worked together to get the information. Is this a similar situation, or is it locked in that we're both on the same?
It is not locked in. We are both required to choose the same provider. They were a part of that selection committee and are planning to recommend CLA to their commission for approval as well.
Okay, because I noticed that the general manager of utilities is on the signature line along with everybody in the city, so didn't know if it was a locked in, we have to do the same thing, or independent.
I believe it'll be independent. I believe with the new forms coming from CLA for the master service agreement, that they would execute an agreement as well.
All right, one more thing in our consent agenda. Our city administrator, Steve Barg, addressed the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee to talk about a request for proposals and to approve property evaluation services. The committee, and maybe our viewers know, the assessment ratio of property around the city is well below 90% for the last 3 years, and we are in need of a reevaluation. The last reevaluation was 2010, and it's definitely outdated, and we have to stay in compliance with state law to do that. The state would require us to begin a reevaluation process if the assessment ratio remains below 90%, which is where it's at. So we have no choice and we must do that. So let's hear from Steve, talk about this and what the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee had to say, so you have a better understanding of what's in this consent agenda for the council.
The assessment ratio for the city, that's the relation between the assessed value and the equalized value that the state sets, has now been below 90% for 3 years. After a 4th year, the state would be mandating that the city go through a revaluation. Revaluation is important because it helps sort of reset the property's values, and it makes sure that everyone who owns property in the city is getting fair and uniform assessments and paying their fair share of the property tax bill. The last one that was done in 2010, and it's clearly outdated as we've identified. Here we are 12 years out and falling behind. Historically, the most common approach that cities and villages have used for revaluation has been sort of called a full revaluation. That's where the assessors have been trying to get into every single property in the city, try to make access to all the homes, get a chance to look around, see what's changed, what's different, does it comply or does it conform to what they see on their property record cards. In recent years, that's become harder because the state passed a law and says that the property owners no longer need to allow you to enter their properties. In fact, they don't have to allow you to enter or be on your premises, walking around, looking at the exterior necessarily. So that's made it more challenging to do a full revaluation. There's another modified version of a full revaluation where they, assessors try to do exterior of all the properties in the city. And again, like I said, that can be a problem in the sense that you're not allowed to be on their property per se either. So there's another option called the intermediate revaluation, and that's more of a statistical reval. And that allows us, I sound like I'm an assessor, I'm obviously not my profession, but allows for a sort of resetting to the correct values based upon class and some other things that they look at to make sure that different types of structures, different types of homes are being looked at in a fair and similar value based upon the criteria that they would usually use to assess and determine values of homes. There would still be the need to go out and do a little bit of exterior looking from time to time on some parcels, and certainly looking on recent sales that will dictate some of that activity as well. But a lot of it is without being in the field. It's done more internally. There are 2 good reasons to do that. The first is that the full cost of a full revaluation is very expensive. We've talked in this room before about as much as $500,000 being what's charged for a full revaluation where you attempt to get into every property in the city. So that's obviously quite costly. The other, as I mentioned before, is because of the recent change in state law, you're lucky to get into maybe it sounds like even a third of the properties because they're not required to allow you access. And quite frankly, if you have not been doing the things you're supposed to in terms of pulling building permits and stuff, you're unlikely to be someone who's going to gain, to give voluntary access to the assessor to walk into your home. So there's a reason to look at doing the statistical or the intermediate revaluation. Staff is recommending that we go this route and recommending that the committee recommend council approval of the request for proposals that you have in your packet to look for qualified firms to do an intermediate revaluation. The only change to what you have in the packet was identified by a member of Steve's staff, and that is item 4F should be the year 2023. I think it says 2024. The intent is that they complete the work, whoever this firm is, for tax year 2023 before it's over, before it's closed out, and that be worked into the proposals.
All right, after we're done with the consent agenda, we're going to move on to presentations. And we have a couple presentations that are going to be provided. One's going to come from the UW, and the other one is also going to come from Visit Marshfield, and that's going to be about tourism. So we'll hear from both of those, and I think it'll be a good one. They come on an annual basis, sometimes on a semi-annual basis, to give an update of what's happening at UWSP, formerly the Wood, as we know, it's UW Marshfield over here. And there's a lot of neat things happening there. I had a chance to tour with Michelle Boranki about a week ago. They're really doing a lot of great things over there. And tune in to her presentation because she's going to explain a lot of things that are available for people like you out there, not just people that attend school. There is a lot of opportunities at our UW to get involved in, from classes to classes that happen at night that aren't part of the normal curriculum. There is places to eat. There's a restaurant in there. I call it a restaurant. Just a lot of opportunity. A library that you can go to, state-of-the-art library, and you can get books quickly, and it's tied into the UW system. There's an exercise facility over there as well. Amazing. And it costs very little to have a membership. And that can be done as well, so you don't have to have a student in class or yourself. So let's listen to Michelle Boranki's report on Tuesday night at the council meeting. I think it'll be a good one. And Matt McLean, which is the director over at Visit Marshfield, is also again going to be giving a presentation on what's happening in our tourism area and how things are going. They are very busy in making sure that we have a lot of great things and events, hotels, places to stay, things to do for not just families that live here, but for those that come and visit. Very important. We're going to get a nice presentation by Matt. And also Matt is on our communications committee, so we welcome him to the council meeting. Another piece in here that's not in consent as well is a second reading of an ordinance, and this was at our last council meeting, Ordinance 1479. It's a removal of lead and galvanized water services. This will come from Nick Cum, and he's the utility manager. Why don't we listen back to what was presented at the last council meeting from Nick to get a little bit of understanding of what he's going to be doing and the second reading.
So tonight, this is the first reading of Ordinance 1479 for a private side lead and galvanized water service replacement. This is something that I've been preempting many times when I've come before this body, so hopefully it's not new, but this is the ordinance that would require the replacement of all the remaining private lead and galvanized water services within the city of Marshfield by December 31st of 2025. A private water service is the piece of water service from the curb stop near the property line into the property or building or home that's owned by the property owner. The Department of Natural Resources in Wisconsin has required that the city of Marshfield or Marshfield Utilities replace all the lead and galvanized water services, both public and private, within the next 15 years, for a total of 168 per year. We began our replacement program last year, and we started last year. We completed 230 services that were replaced, and this year we're on track to replace about 300. That obviously puts us on track overall to be completed with the project in less than 15 years. There are currently 134 private side lead and galvanized water services left in our system. Of those 134, 27 of them are serving commercial properties, and 107 of them are serving residential properties. The ordinance that I've prepared that's in your packet is a similar ordinance that we've seen in other communities that's been passed in other communities in Wisconsin. including Green Bay, Kaukauna, Menasha, Mosinee, and Sun Prairie. There are two minor typos that I just want to highlight in the ordinance that was put in the packet that was brought to my attention after I had put it in there. In section 4E, there's a reference at the end of the section to a subsection 4. It's actually listed as 5, but it should actually be number 4. And then secondly, in section 5, there's a reference to homeowner, and that should be property owner. So we'll get those cleared up for the next reading. There are 3 items that might be of particular interest in this draft ordinance. First, in the intent and purpose section, it indicates that all lead and galvanized water services lines in the city will be replaced within 10 years. This is something that the commission at the utility supports, and this deadline is quicker than one that's required by the DNR. In section 4E, it requires all private lead and galvanized water service replacement to be completed by December 31st of 2025. This roughly 3-year window for private side replacement was selected to increase the likelihood that there might be grant dollars, and I'm going to speak to that here in a minute as well, available from the DNR. Also, allowing the 3 years would provide the property owners time to hopefully plan, budget, and prepare for the replacement. In addition, this will help spread the demand across with the local contractors that need to be put in place to take care of the replacements. And then finally, in section 8, it allows for penalties to be imposed to those who fail to comply with the ordinance. This ordinance was presented to the Marshfield Utility Commission back on September 12th. And at that meeting, the commissioners unanimously voted to support the draft ordinance, recognizing that obviously this body has the ultimate authority on the ordinance. I think we can all say that removal of lead in drinking waters we see it on a national level, but obviously a local priority. And this ordinance would be another tool that will help us move forward with removal here in the city. As we look forward to the second reading, unfortunately, I might have to delay that for a period of time. We learned last week after I put this in the packet that the DNR is changing their funding source program. In the past, they used dollars and we would get them, and we've been doing that for the last couple of years, and that would roll right to the homeowner. Unfortunately, with the Infrastructure and Investment Job Act that came through from the federal level, those dollars are now at the state level, and the state's taking a different look at it, and they're going to look at changing how the priority, the process, and ultimately the availability of these funds get spread out. And unfortunately, that may have an impact on our customer base having the ability to actually receive those funds. So, and if that's the case, we want to reassess the ordinance and make sure that it's set up so that we can take advantage of those funds if they're available. We're currently actively trying to engage with the DNR to learn more about how these changes might impact. So that's kind of the framework of the ordinance, and I guess I'd welcome any initial questions here on this first reading. Speechless.
Seeing no questions? Okay.
Sorry.
Alderman Spiros?
Nick, can you tell me how do property or homeowners know whether their section needs to be replaced? Is there a simple way for them to check into that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So through the last couple of years, we've been sending out regular communications to these property owners to let them know that they have a lead service, that there is a program available, and encouraging them to go forward with it. Before the pandemic, we actually did door-to-door, try to get knock on every door that had a private lead service to let them know that they had it and this program was available to them. And if for some reason there's been turnover or maybe they forgot and they want to check again, they can go to our website. And we have a spot about us. There's a lead service area, and there's an interactive map there that you can click on your property and it'll tell you what your situation is.
Alderman Witzel?
Thank you. How accurate is that information on your website?
It gets updated. Typically within the construction season, we won't get updated. So this year, all the work that's being done this year, we'll update at the end of the year. So, but if you're a property owner that hasn't had anything changed, you should be able to go out there and see the information. Okay.
Because when I asked, you didn't have any clue what my service was, and you actually had to dig up my front yard to be able to get down and figure it out. So is that the case for some of these?
Well, all the ones that we've identified a number of years ago, back in 2012, 2013, we went through and went into everyone's home to replace the water meter. At that time, we also did a cross-connection inspection to make sure there was no any sources that could backfeed our water system. And at that time, we also made note of the material type of the lead of the pipe coming into the home and used that as means to identify what type of service is coming in.
Okay, what year was that?
I believe it started in 2012 was when that project started.
Okay, because in 2019, you still didn't know because the connection was inside of my wall and you couldn't physically see the connection.
Okay.
So a lot of things about this concern me. You said at the state level, and I believe in your memo here, it says in 2020, the DNR said that we had 15 years, which means we have till 2035, but we're going to speed it up by 10 years. That concerns me. I don't understand why we have to speed up. You commented about the funding of the grant money, which I think we've made known numerous times, at least from this platform, and I'm sure from the utility perspective as well. If people aren't taking advantage of it, it's because they don't want to. So I don't really think that speeding this up that much is going to be beneficial. I'm also concerned with a penalty of up to $500 per day for people who don't have it replaced. So a week goes by, that's a whole lot of money. And that really is also very concerning to me. You comment here about, and I guess I'm not certain here, how many public side connections are not up to code?
I did not incorporate the public piece into the memo. We started with 2,400. After this year, with what we've replaced, we should be around 1,900.
So when are those expected to be completed?
Right now, we're actively doing 200 to 300 a year. However, we are working on a program right now where we're working with Ehlers, our financial advisor, to do a program, trying to understand if we could do it in 3 years and how that would look financially.
But at this point, there is no plan to have that done in 3 years, but yet we're expecting the residents to be done in 3 years.
We're looking at a program to do 3 years on the utility side. On the private side, as I mentioned in the write-up, this is what I put out there, and it's obviously subject to, that's why I'm looking for your feedback. If you'd like to see it change, that's obviously a piece of the puzzle that we can modify.
Again, I have concern when we're dictating what people have to do with their properties, and I understand there's a safety concern, but I also understand there's some people in the public who just don't care. And so I guess I sort of feel like it's Big Brother pushing down on the property owner saying you must, or you're facing a $500 a day penalty, and that the whole thing just kind of doesn't sit right with me. Thank you.
I respectfully understand your comments. I think one item to note is that the DNR is requiring this. But at the end of the day,
by 2035.
Correct. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, there's a few items we're going to be waiting on, and hopefully it'll come to our next Common Council later in October, which is our second regular meeting of the month. Right now, we're holding a first reading of an ordinance on ATV and UTVs. We need to make sure that we have everything ready to go. That has been discussed in our Board of Public Works. So if you do want to catch what they're talking about, just go back a few meetings and you'll be able to listen to Tom Turchi, our city engineer, talk about that. There's another piece also, installing electrical vehicle chargers, that has been discussed at Public Works as well. Right now that is not going to be on the agenda, as I understand. Will be on the agenda coming up, and that was discussed in Public Works a meeting or two ago as well. But I also want to give you an updated 2023 budget calendar revision. The last council meeting, they talked about moving it I shouldn't say up a week, down a week. And just so you're aware, Monday, October 17th, that's going to be budget meeting number 1. And that does include the entire Common Council. So it is a Common Council meeting. It's just not a regular Common Council meeting. Monday, October 17th, 6:30, or after Board of Public Works and Finance meetings. Again, we don't know how long those will last. Generally, we're hoping around 6:30. They're usually can be half hour to 45 minutes each meeting. So right after that, we'll get into that number 1 budget meeting, which is an important one with the council. Then we'll reconvene on Tuesday, October 25th for budget meeting number 2. And that's prior to the regular council meeting, which is going to be moved back to 7 o'clock that night. So this one, October 25th, is going to take place at 5 p.m., again, prior to the Common Council meeting. So tune in. We probably will be reviewing some of the budgets that maybe we didn't get to with the council. So this might be some one-time pieces that didn't get into budget meeting 1. I don't have the actual lineup at this point. I believe if Steve was here, he would be able to tell me. But please, you're more than welcome. It is an open meeting. To come to these meetings, see where money's being spent. You can really get to hear what the council's thinking, what staff's thinking. A lot of this stuff is taxpayer money, not all of it in a budget, but when we're talking about the general fund, we're talking well over $22 million. Let's talk about the third budget meeting. We have one planned. We actually have 4 planned. I don't know if we'll do all 4. It could happen Monday, October 31st, Halloween. Budget meeting number 3, 6 o'clock. Again, right after Board of Public Works. And then budget meeting number 4, if they so choose and need it. That is again on a Monday, November 7th. Well, thanks again for watching us on this council preview program. I'm the communications director, Tom Loucks. And next time we'll have Steve Barg and Lois T. Strake hopefully here. We'll see where it goes. Maybe, maybe not because of the budget. If not, I will do this again to provide as much information as I can.